Matthew chapter 27, verse 5 through 10, and we want to look at a second portion, just two verses, which takes us over to verse 45 and verse 46. Matthew chapter 27, verse 5 through 10, and verse 45 and verse 46. We're in the middle of the crucifixion scene, and at the beginning of the Good Friday day, here is what takes place. You know the scene. Judas, of course, the betrayer, has come running. He's given his confession. And in verse 5, this is what it says. Then Judas threw down the pieces of silver in the temple and departed and went and hanged himself. But the chief priest took the silver pieces and said, "It is not lawful to put them into the treasury, because they are the price of blood." And they took counsel and bought with them the potter's field to bury strangers in. Therefore that field has been called the field of blood to this day. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, "And they took the 30 pieces of silver, the value of him who was priced, whom they, the children of Israel, priced, and gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord directed me." Verse 45. Now from the 6th hour until the 9th hour, there was darkness over all the land. And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Back to verse 5. You know the scene. It's 5 to 6 a.m. in the morning. Oh, it had been a long night. You see, they'd come in the 1 or 2 hour of the morning, and they'd grabbed a hold of Jesus in a garden of Gethsemane, about 600 to 1,000 men with torches and staves, and they've drug him off to Caiaphas' palace. It's a mock trial, illegal because it's held at night. In a demonic frenzy, they've literally beaten Jesus nearly half to death. They've pulled his beard out by its roots. They've disfigured his face. His eyes are sunk into his head. His hair is filled with dried blood. They've stuck him in a little room. Now the whole Sanhedrin has come that morning. In a 5-second trial, they have verified the illegal trial they've had that night. Now they want to beat the crowds to the streets and get him down to Pilate's palace. So they've drug him out of this little room at the 5 to 6 a.m. hour in the morning, and they've got his hands tied behind his back. Standing back in the shadows is a man by the name of Judas. He's watching the commotion that's going on. He looks at the face. Oh, the face. It's the face that gets him. He sees the results of his own betrayal. Something down deep inside of him begins to stir within him. He realizes what has been going on and what he has done. And overwhelming remorse grips him. Overwhelming conviction. He has this great inward sense that he wants to undo what he's done. Can you see him? He's got the bag in his hand. 30 pieces of silver. Hasn't spent one single one of those coins. He comes running with all of his might. He runs right past the soldiers, right past Jesus, right up to the chief priest. And in verse 4, he gives his great confession. He says, "Oh my God, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood." Now get the scene. Here's a man all torn up inside. Here's a man whose life is disturbed. Here's a man who's been ripped right down the middle. He sees what he is and what he's done. And in overwhelming conviction, he comes to the church. Look at how the church responds into verse 4. What is that to us? You see to it. A man is torn up inside with sin and guilt. What is that to us? A man's life has come to a brink of decision. What is that to us? A man needs alteration. He needs overwhelming help. He needs God to do something. What is that to us? Can't you see we're having a committee meeting? Can't you see we're planning our potluck? Can't you see we're busy crucifying Jesus? And a man goes out and hangs himself. Because the church didn't care. There's got to be a message in that, doesn't there? Now, out of overwhelming frustration, Judas just doesn't know what to do. And out of frustration, can you see him? He takes the bag that's in his hand. He leans back and he throws that bag through the air. It goes flying over the wall of the temple court and lands in the courtyard of the temple and hits the stone floor and bursts wide open, and 30 coins go jingling down the corridors. Can you see these men of dignity? After their names, they have PhD, PhD, PhD. They're dressed in long flowing robes, double-breasted suits. Men of dignity, you know. They go running after these 30 coins. Get that one right there. Oh, don't let that one escape. Hey, that one's over there. Don't miss that one. And they squat and pick them up. They've saved all 30 pieces now. Now comes the big question. What are we going to do with these 30 pieces of silver? Put them in the evangelist offering? No, we can't do that. Why not? Well, you can't take 30 pieces of silver, these 30 pieces of silver, and put them in that offering plate. Now, wait a minute. These same identical 30 pieces of silver came out of that offering plate. Well, yeah, but you can't put them back in there. In fact, that coin right there, see that nick on it right there? I remember taking that identical coin out of this offering plate. It's the same coin. Now that we can't put it back. Let me get this straight. You can take these coins out of the offering plate and make them blood money. But once they become blood money, you can't put them back. That's right. So what are we going to do with these 30 pieces of silver? Let's appoint a committee to study the situation. Let's appoint a committee to study the subject of the legality of the temple money. Let's establish a commission to investigate it. Did you see the hypocrisy in that? While they were wrestling over the overwhelming legality, over the overwhelming morality, while they are wrestling with the issue of blood money, temple money, offering plates, they go right on and nail Jesus to a tree. Don't blink an eye. Legalism at its core. Hypocrisy blaringly displayed. But then you see, legalism is always hypocritical. It's the nature of the beast. There's no way out of it. The minute you become legalistic, you are filled with hypocrisy. And we sit around and argue about the legality of the temple money while we go right on and nail Jesus to a tree and don't even blink an eye. Oh, the committee has come back. They have made a decision about what to do with the 30 pieces of silver. They've decided to buy a piece of ground there in Jerusalem. Cheap, real cheap piece of ground. Why is it so cheap? Oh, that's easy. It's called the Potter's Field. Now, the reason it was called the Potter's Field is because this man owned this field. It had clay on it, so it was valuable. He cut out the clay. Potters were constantly coming to the field to buy the clay, thus called Potter's Field. But now you see the clay has been depleted and the field is worthless and it's small anyway, so what are you going to do with it? So he sells it for 30 pieces of silver. One scholar says that was worth about $15 in our economy. Real cheap. So they bought the Potter's Field. Why? Oh, to bury strangers in. All these people make spiritual pilgrimages to Jerusalem. Their family isn't with them. They die. What are you going to do with them? Put them in the Potter's Field. Bury them there. Then you come to verse 9. It's the prophecy. Look at verse 9. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet. Now, as you get into this prophecy, you begin to discover that it wasn't just Jeremiah. Zachariah was involved. In fact, he really was predominant in the whole prophecy. He's really the symbol of the prophecy. Why isn't his name mentioned here? Oh, that's easy. You see, Jeremiah was the major prophet. Zachariah was the minor prophet. Thus, Jeremiah is the only one mentioned. But Zachariah is really the one that's involved in the prophecy. Now, the story is this. Zachariah was a shepherd. But he wasn't a very good shepherd. Sold his sheep at the wrong time, lost his shirt on that one. Oh, disease got into his sheep, and a lot of them died because he didn't watch what he was doing and didn't know what to do. And he wasn't a very good shepherd. He just didn't make much of a profit in his shepherding business. So since he failed as a shepherd, you know what he decided to do? Become an evangelist. You can always do that, you know. So now he's an evangelist. He's a prophet, and he's not very good at his profiting business either. Failed as a shepherd, now he's trying to be a prophet of God. And his sermons are, they're really long. Well, they aren't long, they just seem that way. And they're just really boring, you know. And his pastoral mannerisms, very, very poor. In fact, if you're sick in the hospital, you hope he doesn't show up because you always feel worse when he leaves than when he came. So you just wish that he wouldn't show up. And here's his pastoral mannerisms, his preaching. He's just a poor pastor. Failed as a shepherd, failing as a prophet. Now, how do you go up to a guy and look him right in the eye and say, your sermons stink? Oh, I know, you'd find a way. But they had a difficult time with it. How do you tell a guy that his ministry just isn't very valuable? That you really don't appreciate it? They found a way too. You know what they decided to do? They told him how cheap, how meaningless, how insignificant his ministry was by what they paid him. Want to talk about pastoral salaries at this point. They came right up to him with 30 pieces of silver, $15, presented it to him and said, here's how valuable your ministry is to us. It was a slap in the face, brother. It was a joke. It was a ridicule. The symbol of Jesus. That's where verse 9 comes in, right in the middle. The value of him who was prized. All of this was about this Jesus who was to come, because that's exactly what they did with Jesus, and Zachariah was a symbol of that whole thing. Wow. Hey, Jesus, I want to tell you something. We can buy and sell you for 30 pieces of silver, $15. You want to know how significant your miracles are? You want to know how great we think your miracles are? We'll just tell you, $15. You want to know how wonderful your sermons are? Well, we'll be glad to let you in on it. $15. You want to know how valuable your touch is on our lives? $15, brother. We can get one of your own men to sell you out for $15. That's how valuable your ministry is to us. $15. Here's the question. How valuable is Jesus to you? Now wait, get the question. The question is not how valuable is Jesus. We all know the answer to that, don't we? How valuable is Jesus? Well, we've been around the church long enough to figure that out. We've memorized all the phrases. We can jump to our feet. We can click our heels together, raise our hand in the air and say, he's the most valuable thing in my life. Glory to God. The bright and morning star, the fairest of 10,000. Wonderful Counselor, mighty God. We got all that down. But see, that's not the question. The question is not how valuable is Jesus. The question is how valuable is Jesus to you? Oh, come on up and testify. Grab a microphone. Come on, convince us. Convince us. Oh, Jesus is the most valuable thing in my life. Oh, convince us. Come on, really convince us. Give us some arguments. Lay out some evidence. How valuable is Jesus to you? Oh, I'll tell you, preacher, he's the most valuable thing in my life. Yeah, Jesus is the most valuable thing in my life. In fact, I'll just tell you, you want the proof of it? I'll tell you. I give him 15 minutes every single morning of my life. Yeah, give him 15 minutes. Hey, I always start my day with Bible reading. Yes, sir, and prayer. 15 minutes. Always dedicate the first 15 minutes of the day to Jesus. That's how valuable Jesus is to me. And then I go and work 8 hours for myself. Why am I not convinced? Well, I give him 15 minutes every day, right at the morning. And then I have to work 8 hours for myself. After all, I've got the 7th TV set to pay for. And you know, I got 15 kids. I mean, I have to work 8 hours a day for myself. I mean, I got all these bills and I got, you don't want me to quit my job. No. Don't quit your job.
It's perspective. See, you don't get it. It's viewpoint. It's how you look at it. It's inside stuff. But then that's what holiness is, isn't it? Inside stuff. It's how you view it. Let me ask you a question. Why do you work? Why do I work? That's a dumb question. I work to make money. Why else would I work? That stinking job. I go down there every day for money, 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 money. I can hardly wait for retirement. I've only got 10 years, 3 months, and 4 days left. That's sick. That is sick. Absolutely sick. In fact, if I acted that way, you wouldn't have me. Your board writes to me and says, we'd like to have you come for a revival, Manley. I write back, say, I won't open my mouth for less than $3,000, man. Won't even show up, brother. Want a guarantee, sign this contract, guarantee me $3,000 before I open my mouth. You know what your board would say? They'd look at one another and say, all he cares about is money. He didn't care about ministry. Just money, money, money. That's all he cares about. We don't want him preaching in our pulpit because all he talks about is money. First thing on his mind is money. But you can do that and it's okay. Hello? There's something wrong with that. Well, why else would I go down to that job if it weren't to make money? I mean, that's why you work, is to make money. Oh, sick. You don't get the picture. You don't know that God has picked you up and he has strategically located you right in your workforce. And you go down there 8 hours a day, brother, rubbing shoulders with men and women. 8 hours a day, you reach out and touch people that we will never see. We can't even get them in the church building. And you go down there every single day of the week and you rub shoulders with these people and you are a full-time, down to it, call of God pastor. Amen. To your workforce. What am I supposed to do down there as a pastor? Oh, everything you want your pastor to do for you, you do for them. Hey, you get to know their names. Hey, you pray for them. Hey, you witness to them. Oh, visit them when they're sick. Hey, get to know their family. Invite them over to your house. Begin to bring them to church. And what are you? A full-time, down-to-it, call of God pastor. Don't you think it's an absolute crock that you've been down at that job 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5, 6, how many years you've been down there, and you have never, ever won anybody to Jesus at your, there's nobody in church because God chose you. What have you been doing? If your pastor did that, you'd fire him. How valuable is Jesus to you? Oh, Jesus is the most valuable thing in my life. I give him 15 minutes every single morning of my life, and then I go 8 hours at the job for Jesus. Wow. How valuable is Jesus to you? Oh, grab a microphone, will you? Testify. Come on, convince us. Oh, I want to tell you, preacher, Jesus is the most valuable thing in my life. Yes, sir, yes, sir. I give him 15 minutes every single morning, prayer and devotion. 15 minutes, and then I sleep 8 hours for myself. Why am I not convinced? Well, I give him 15 minutes every morning and I have to have 8 hours of sleep. I just can't function with 8 hours of sleep. You don't want me to give up my beauty rest. No, you need it, brother. You really need it. Don't give up your beauty rest. See, it's perspective. Here's a suggestion. You lay down to go to sleep and your mind is just racing. It's just racing. It's just full of this. It's like this computer that you can't turn off. It's just filled with what am I going to do tomorrow and how am I going to, and you're making all these plans and you just can't, and you just sit there and you just lay there and you toss and you. Suggestion. Jump in bed and fellowship with Jesus. These courses we've been seeing. Wow. One reason you learn these courses, sure, to praise and worship here. But when you go to bed, don't sing them out loud, your wife will. But lay there in bed and sing them in your mind. Wouldn't it be something to lay there in bed and just sing love songs to Jesus? Just clear your brain and sing love songs to Jesus. Just worship him. Wow. You fell asleep singing love songs to Jesus. In the morning you wake up. Still singing love songs to Jesus? You don't suppose that Jesus has been working in your subconscious brain and has been cleansing you through the night. And it's 15 minutes in the morning for Jesus, and it's 8 hours at the job for Jesus, and it's 8 hours of sleep for Jesus. Wow. How valuable is Jesus to you? He's the most valuable thing in my life, preacher. Well, come on, grab a microphone, will you? Convince me. Oh, well, I give him 15 minutes every morning of my life. Yes, sir. You know, prayer and Bible reading. Hey, give him 15 minutes every morning, and then I have 8 hours of recreation for myself. Well, I got to have some time off.